Hello, everyone. Just a few minutes until we get started. Welcome, everyone. We are ready to get started. Finance Commission Chair, will you please open the meeting?
All right, let's call the special meeting of the South Pasadena Finance Commission to order. It's Thursday, June 9th. It's about 6:36 p.m. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Commission Chair Elsner.
Here.
Commissioner Tao.
Here.
Commissioner Finley. Absent. Commissioner Quaid. Commissioner Giulioni. Commissioner Quaid, are you able to?
Okay.
Commissioner Quaid? I see her on here, but regardless, we do have a quorum.
All right, so let's get started. The first item on the agenda is general public comment. Do we have anyone in the Zoom raising their hands?
No, we have no general public comment and no hands raised.
All right, and then let's move on to the item number 2. That's the fiscal year 2020-2021 draft annual comprehensive report. Ken?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. Tonight, we proudly present the final draft of our annual comprehensive financial report. With us tonight, we have the audit manager, Brianna Schultz, from Rogers, Anderson, Melody and Scott. Brianna has a wealth of experience, having completed over 100 audits, fiscal audits for either municipalities or special districts. She was the audit manager directly over the audits, and she's here tonight to give the commission a reasonable amount of assurance that our audit went well and what we can look forward to going forward. Brianna?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me clear? Good?
Yeah, we're good.
Yes.
Very good, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for having me tonight. I first want to start off quickly by saying thank you so much to the finance department and all staff. They really put in some work the last 2 weeks to get the last few audit request items completed. I was able to finish all of the testing last week, and we got, you know, all the last pieces to kind of put this final report together for you all. So I'm going to share my screen. I don't have a formal presentation per se, but just a few things in the ACFR that I want to host. Am I able to share screen? Is that allowed? It says I'm disabled right now.
Go ahead and try that now.
Thank you. Okay, I hope you can all see the balance sheet. Is that what you guys see?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at the balance sheet of the governmental funds. You'll find that on page, if you're looking at a hard copy, it's page 15 of the ACFR, or PDF page 38. I just want to point out the general fund is our left first column here, and you have a very healthy unassigned fund balance in the general fund. I know it shows the statement of net position has a negative unrestricted, but that's really just because of the pension and OPEB liabilities. We're probably a little more concerned with the balance sheet and the operations of the general fund. So on, let's see, the following page is page 17. This is essentially your net income. So revenues less the expenses. The net change, we had a gain of just over $7 million in the general fund for fiscal year 21. So again, healthy progress moving forward. These statements are not too exciting for fiscal year 21. There's no new governmental accounting standards that we had to implement. Yeah, nothing too crazy. I'll just point out quickly your CalPERS net pension liability. This says net changes during 2019 to 20 because the information that's coming from CalPERS as the actuarial valuation, everything is a year behind. So just to keep that in mind, it's not just for you guys, this is across the board. And so both your miscellaneous plan net pension liability went up almost $1 million, and safety about 2.4 million. And last thing I want to point out is page 63. This is the budget versus actual comparison for the general fund. And we can see a positive variance. So more revenues came in higher than budget of about 2.3, and our spending was just under budget of about 700,000. So both, you know, very positive changes once again. So there's not a whole lot else that I want to point out other than we have an unmodified opinion. This is a clean audit. You know, it's the highest level of assurance that we can provide. And I'm not sure if it was shared with you as well. I didn't look through the entire agenda packet, but for the findings, in the prior year, we had a few material weaknesses and a few significant deficiencies. Based on staff efforts, those significant deficiencies have been dropped and addressed. So we have fewer findings for fiscal year 21 to report as well. So glad to give that positive news, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys may have.
Before I open it up for the commissioners, if people are watching, this is the annual report for the 2020-2021 fiscal year, and there's fewer items in the management letter, and so my understanding is some of those are going to improve in the current fiscal year. So I think that's a really good sign that we're moving forward and getting those things addressed. But let me open it up to the other commissioners if they have any questions.
Brianna, this is Pete Giulioni. I am, I guess, questioning whether or not you have confidence that the changes that were put into place over the last year or so are having a positive impact first. And then second, are those changes, into your mind, sustainable, and are we positioned to do so in the future?
Yeah, good question. Very definitely, I feel they are sustainable. Progress is slow because of they still need more staff. I can't tell you how many, an exact number of how many more staff are needed in the finance department, but a full-time, full hire finance director would be a huge benefit as well. Not that Ken and Marcy prior to that aren't useful, but it's just a different role, and I know it's not permanent. So with that being said, I know there's a huge push for the fiscal year 22 audit to progress and move forward as quickly as possible. And I truly hope and will be, of as much assistance as I can be to make sure that happens. But I really feel that the staff that are there, they're doing everything they can and they're doing a brilliant job of it. But there needs to be at least one, maybe two more people in that department, or else there's still day-to-day operations that need to keep up and be maintained, and adding, possible other software implementations, and, maybe bringing in other consultants is an option as well to do, one of the findings is related to capital asset tracking module. And so whether your accounting software can support that, I'm not entirely sure, but maybe it would be beneficial to have, a consultant come in and help implement that kind of system. So I hope that kind of answered your question, but the progress is definitely moving forward, yes. But I can see it's still going to be a challenge with the staffing level that it's currently at.
Brianna, you validated one of my, I guess, my concerns, is that is the staffing level. Ken, what progress is being made?
Commissioner Giuliani, first I'll address the big picture. We're excited because you might recall that we had 7 findings from our last audit. The audit manager, Brianna, is now willing to pull down 3 or 4 of them. The ones that come to mind are, now we have a grants person in place. We don't leave any money on the table. That person now is in municipal services. We've also, as you know, we're on the cusp of finalizing our policies and procedures. So that finding, she's agreed to take off as well. Also, there's been an improvement in how we sign off on documents in the department, so that will be removed as well. But yeah, some of the other ones that remained include getting more staffing. We're just understaffed, and it could really help us, especially in the close of fiscal year during audit time.
I guess my question is, what progress are we making in identifying and bringing those people on board?
We kind of are evaluating that now, looking at our staffing, and we'll be presenting something to the city manager's office in the next 60 days.
Okay. So by the end of summer, we should have a response.
Yes.
Have that. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Brianna, for your answer. Appreciate it. Thank you, Ken.
Ken, I have a general question just about your position. Is it time limited under the CalPERS retiree rules, and how is that going to play out?
In general, you're limited as a retiree to 960 hours per fiscal year. But during COVID, because everything was happening, they removed the restrictions. But now in the new fiscal year, it returns back to the 960. So for example, in my position, if I was to stay on board, I'd be limited to the 960. But I know that administrations, the next couple of months is definitely going to be going hard in national search and having someone in place by towards the end of the year, for sure.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Brianna, I'm wondering, I know that the city has an ambitious goal of getting the next ACFR done by end of December. Do you think with current staffing levels that we're going to be able to meet that goal, or is that going to depend on us recruiting new people?
I don't think I can give you an answer to that one. I think that's maybe a better answer for Ken and Armina, to be honest.
Thanks for your.
Sorry. Yeah, I wish I could say, but I wish I could say yes, but I don't know the reality of the workload.
Understood.
Ken, over to you with that question. What is your level of confidence that we're going to be able to meet the end of the year goal?
I feel very strongly that we'll definitely accomplish that. We have some good ideas out there, but because personnel related, we can't really go into it too much, but
That's
we
fair.
have some good plans.
Okay. And what does this committee have to do in order to ensure that you get there?
Give direction going forward to management, to council, that you'd like to see us get fully staffed so we can get our A game back as far as reporting.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Do we have enough money in the budget to hire additional staff and also to either have a consultant come in and look at software to see if there is a capital asset capability with the software that they have currently, or if there is a package that can be purchased to help the staff out?
What we would do is we'd start a project to look into potential better systems that can help us be more efficient, provide a faster product. We would have to get funding from council that's not currently appropriated. I know with the SLRF money that the council will be approving technology funds, but that is not currently in that list of technology items. And so to answer your question, we would have to appropriate money for a specific new system or
Okay.
upgraded system.
Well, what about staff, additional staff, Ken? Is there money appropriated for that?
There's not currently money appropriate for additional staff. We would go to council separately and ask for those dollars.
Okay.
And then if I understand what you said earlier, Ken, what you would want is when you do go to council, you go with our support and our recommendation, correct?
Yes, that would go a long way.
Yes.
Commissioner Tao, do you have any questions or comments?
No, not at this point.
All right.
Mr. Chair, can I have a question?
Okay.
Brianna, I know that we have adopted, the council has adopted the recommendation of Finance Commission on the policies and procedures. Are we in compliance?
I'm sorry, is your question, are you in compliance, the current policies and procedures that are pending approval from council?
I think we adopted it already.
Okay, I think it maybe had just happened. Ken and I kind of talked about it last week.
Well, in
Yeah.
terms of filing quarterly financials and media financials.
Okay, if I can speak to that. To answer your first part of your question, you asked, are we in compliance with our policy procedures? Brianna, in good faith, has agreed to remove the item from our findings because, as we're all aware, we took it to council and council asked for a little more, some modifications, but we have formally completed the project and we're in the process of completing that. So she agreed to remove it, and we need to finish that next few weeks.
And that
Second
was, sorry, if I can jump in and add, it's subject to still for, my review and approval, or our grants, review and approval for the fiscal year 22 audit. But I wouldn't see, any problems with it not being in compliance. There's not a whole lot of, set rules, but it has to state X, Y, Z. It's something, as long as you have something in writing and that everyone acknowledges it, the department and council, that's the compliance portion of it, really.
But council member, that wasn't your question. Your question was, are we currently in compliance?
Correct.
And then would the adoption of the new policies and procedures put us solidly in compliance?
Right.
That's the question I heard.
Okay, so technically, as of June 30, 2021, no, you were not in compliance because those procedures did not exist as of that date. But
Okay,
as of the date that we're issuing the report, there has been significant enough progress made towards rectifying that issue. So we have decided to remove the findings. So At this point, we are saying that you are in compliance because progress has been made to fix the problem.
So what support do you need from us, Ken, to ensure that those policies and procedures are adopted?
Just further stating that we need to bring that project to fruition. Council had some good questions, some good recommendations.
Okay,
We're just trying to tie those up. And we're basically at the end of that project. The legwork's been done. We're just waiting for council's final blessing now.
okay.
Yeah.
So that is before council.
Yes, we've done the first presentation.
That would be on a June 15, Or
There's no
July.
meeting, the first meeting in July, so it'll be the second meeting in July.
July 20. Okay. I have another question, Brianna. I know that the city had applied for the GFOA
Mhm.
award in on fiscal year ending June 30, 2020. And you said that we haven't heard from GFOA. How long is the adjudication period and what are the guidelines?
So GFOA, I'm actually a GFOA reviewer of ACFRs in other states. And so the program is very far behind right now. It is about a year behind. So it's not surprising you guys are not the only one that have issued their next set of financial statements and not received the prior year comments. So, we're doing our best to address the comments that we got in 2019 and fix those going forward. But I would think maybe in the next 4 to 5 months, the 2020 comments will arrive. And it's just going to be a lag. You guys aren't the only ones. I'll be quite honest. I have a handful of other clients that are going through the same issue.
Brianna, and I have some new information that just came in yesterday. We just received information that we did receive the award.
Okay.
Councilmember, but they do have a couple comments that they want us to respond on, but they said they sent a congratulatory letter.
Okay.
Thank you, Brianna.
Thank you.
That's good news.
Congratulations, Ken.
Yes, congratulations.
Congratulations, Ken. Thank you, Brianna.
So I think before we have some discussion about recommendation or tabling this or something, let's see if we have any public comments on the annual report.
We did not receive any emailed public comments. There are no public comment cards here. Would anybody on the Zoom attendees like to make a comment? There are no hands raised.
Thanks, Stephanie. So I think the agenda, this is a receive and file. We got this yesterday, and to be honest, I haven't given it that kind of really thorough vetting that I would like to do, or that I typically would want to do. And so to try to kind of frame the discussion, do we want to talk about receiving and filing and passing it on? Do we want more time to review it and make a strong recommendation one way or the other? I'm curious what the other commissioners' thoughts are on that.
Brianna's comments make me feel comfortable, and the review that I managed to do on the document, I feel like we can move forward.
Thank you. Commissioner Quay, do you have thoughts one way or the other on that?
I do. As I was reading through it, I got through it today too. And I felt comfortable since the audit has been completed. And just reading through the description and the management discussion, I was feeling pretty comfortable with going ahead and just giving it to council.
Thank you. Commissioner Tao, do you have feelings about this?
I was a little confused. I thought this meeting was getting postponed until next week. But I did get to go through it a little bit just now. It does seem like we're in a much better position, and it seems like people are generally comfortable or with where we are. So I'm happy to defer to the group.
All right. Does someone want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we, what's the proper way to frame that?
This would be a motion to receive and file the draft ACFR for fiscal year 2020, 2021.
I make a motion to receive and file the draft annual comprehensive report and pass it along to council for 2021 and pass it along to council.
All right, do I have a second on that?
Second,
All right, let's take a roll call on that.
Let's do a roll call. Chair Elsner,
Yes.
Commissioner Tao,
Yeah.
Commissioner Quaid,
yes,
Commissioner Giulioni,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thank you. Next item on the agenda, this is,
And thank you, Brianna.
yes, thank you very much, Brianna. for
Thank
still
you
out
all.
here.
Have a great
thank
evening.
you.
Brianna,
We really
Good evening.
appreciate your working with staff. It's good. I got a really good sense that there's a good working relationship with staff and with the auditor, and so that's good stuff. So thank you very much.
Well, of course, take care.
All right. So next item is the Finance Ad Hoc Committee Final Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. There's no staff report on this tonight, but it's just a time to allow the commission to make comments regarding the report.
I was a part of the ad hoc committee as a citizen member before joining the Finance Commission, and worked with staff, both temporary and permanent staff, as well as council members, to review and to try to dig behind the 5 charters of that committee, or the 5 elements of the charter of that committee. Only last Saturday did we finally meet a group of 7 of us, the final members of the committee, met, and we worked through the wording on what had been some difficult and complex components of that particular report. I think the report has gone through, if I say 20 to 25 revisions, I don't think I'm exaggerating.
Wow.
It is the effort that I thought will probably follow me for the next 3 or 4 years. I'm suffering from PTSD as a result of working on this. I do believe that the report represents fairly the efforts of the group. I do believe that the report, although a bit verbose and a bit wordy when it didn't need to be, represents the feelings of the group. And I signed off on it personally, along with the 7 members that were there on Saturday. So what I would recommend is that we move it forward to council. And I would recommend that with some additional conversation amongst us, and we move it forward and really put this piece of South Pasadena history behind us. So.
Thank you, Pete. I did have some comments about this, and I really first, what I'll talk about is, first, I was on the committee, but then I stepped off the committee, so I'll address some of the reasons why I made that decision. But before I do that, I just want to say it was a really rewarding experience for me to be asked to be on the committee, and I really want to give credit to Steve Rossi for coming up with the idea and making it happen. It was a very good experience working with staff. We had a list of projects that we worked on with staff. And I think the committee, it served the purpose of restoring trust between the community and with the city. We had a lot of good discussions with staff, and they really earned my trust and respect, and gave me a lot of confidence that we're heading in the right direction. And the work they did on the projects that we worked on was fantastic. And the committee members too. I was just so impressed and learned a lot from them. They all came to the committee with different skill sets and different observations. And I think the combined work of all the committee members and the staff really resulted in better financial documents, annual reports, budgets. It was a positive thing. And again, like I said, we really went a long way for me personally to restore confidence in the direction the city was going. So again, I was on the committee. I'm in kind of a unusual situation where I was on the committee. I stepped off the committee. Now I'm on the commission, and we're taking a look at the final report. So I think my overall kind of impression and one of the reasons why I decided to step off the committee was I came to the conclusion that I think the committee and the city would have benefited from more of a transparency in terms of access to the committee's deliberations, so that the city and the residents could see how the committee conducted its deliberations, what its methods were, how it did its fact checking and due diligence. And I think it would have been nice to have a better record of that. I don't recall if there's any formal minutes that were made. There was emails and whatnot about what we would discuss, but I don't know if anyone actually recorded formal minutes. We have 2 recorded videos that are linked on the report, but there were more meetings and there was more discussion. And I think at some point, there was some news articles and people were like, what, this is shrouded in mystery and whatnot. And I don't think that there was anything to be concerned about, but I think that more transparency would have really helped people to kind of see like what went into the making of this report and what was discussed, what was not discussed. Are the conclusions supportable? And just more information for people to read the report and then evaluate it and decide what kind of weight they want to give to the conclusion. So I think if this hopefully never comes up again in the future, but if it did, at least with the last item on the scope document, which was to assess the necessity of forensic audits. The earlier projects were time sensitive, and we had to kind of roll up our sleeves and work with staff and get those done. But once that passed, I think we had more of a luxury to kind of take a closer look at a lot of other issues. And then I think we could have done it as like a Brown Act advisory committee in a more formal way. And then there'd be more of a record, and, they could see how these were discussed. And there was some good discussions. And I think there were some other discussions that it could have been improved. So anyway, what I want to do is I didn't want to go this long, but I just wanted to get on the record. But anyway, I'll keep going. In September 2021, the drafting of the final report kind of started. And it started with an initial draft that was authored by one committee member that included findings and conclusions about various things. And it was similar to the final report. But at the time, my first thought was, there's a lot of stuff in here that we haven't really reviewed in any kind of systematic way as a committee. That led to a discussion about what the scope of the committee was and how deep we were going to go into certain things. And I think there was a really good discussion and lots of different points of views about what exactly was the scope. And, that part of that discussion is on one of the videos that's linked in the report. So, but for me personally, I think that the the better approach would have been to have deliberations one by one about various topics and then come to a consensus about a conclusion rather than starting with conclusions authored by one member who has strong views about various things and then working from there. So it was sort of like a cart before the horse thing for me, which I wasn't super comfortable with. We did at that meeting that was the subject of the video, come up with kind of an alternative process where I would work with that other committee member and try to resolve points of disagreement and then bring unresolved issues to the rest of the committee. And so I authored a draft and it was very time consuming and painstaking. And we were looking back several years and I did a lot of review of documents and videos and really wanted to draft something that reflected, I think, a general consensus about what were the main themes that we wanted to convey and what we saw as the most significant failures in what happened leading up to 2020. And so I put a lot of time into it. There was some initial discussion with the other committee member, but there was no real kind of back and forth in terms of identifying points of disagreement, trying to resolve them, and then flagging those for discussion. So about 2 or 3 months passed. My draft was, I think, in November or December. And then in late February, the other committee member that I was working with circulated a new draft. And it was, in a lot of ways, more broad in scope than the initial draft. And I hadn't seen it before it was circulated to the committee. We didn't have any discussions about it. A lot of the content I had questions about. And again, there were a lot of things that were included in there that there was really no prior systematic discussion by the committee. So at that point, I had a decision whether it was for me personally, do I want to invest the amount of time to kind of start from, scratch on this? Or would it be better possibly if I just stepped off and let the rest of the committee members try to come to some kind of a consensus? Like I said, I did have some concern about the content, and that was enough for me to say when I stepped down that I did not want to be represented as endorsing the content of it. I just think that process of starting with conclusions without deliberations, I think that was backwards. And by the time this new draft had been circulated, I personally made the choice not to continue participating in the drafting of the report. So I stepped down and I maintained the separation from the committee, didn't review any subsequent drafts and didn't provide feedback on subsequent drafts to any committee member or anybody else. And I just, kept my distance. And I think in terms of my participation that there was, there's a pretty good record of email correspondence and also the video that kind of lays out in more detail what my thoughts were. So that's just background on why I decided to step down. So I did have some thoughts on the final report, and these are mostly questions that I would have if I were reading the report that have to do with certain conclusions. And in some ways, it's a little bit of a critique. And again, I think in general, the ultimate conclusions about failures of governance and the origins of the financial reporting problems, I think there was general agreement about it. But I do think they're lost in this very long, small font, multi-page document that's in a lot of ways kind of like a pseudo legal document. I think it's all kind of the good work we did on those tasks with staff is kind of buried in that. Anyway, I'll just go into some of my observations on the content of the report, just for anyone who's reading, and maybe it will be helpful to kind of get those thoughts. On page 4 of the report, there's some definitions of terms from Investopedia about red flags. And one of those is conflict of interest. It's defined as when a fraudster uses their influence for personal gains to the city's detriment. I think in other parts of the report, there's references to conflicts of interest. And I think that the report could be a little bit more precise about what are we talking about? Are we talking about the conflict of interest? That's the definition where a fraudster is using influence for personal gains, or is it some other type of conflict of interest from a different context? So that was one comment or thought that I think there could have been a better definition of terms. On page 2, I'm sorry, page 4, finding number 2, there's in the preliminary sentence, the finance department reorganization and the procurement of the Citygate report were undertaken in circumstances that give rise to questions about a possible lack of transparency or a possible attempt to cover up alleged asset misappropriation. And asset misappropriation is defined earlier as activities which could include embezzlement and whatnot. And so the report describes the circumstances around the procurement of the Citygate report and suggests the possibility that that report was procured to cover up and possibly embezzlement. But one comment I wanted to make was that in this assessment of the potential need for a forensic audit, the committee report doesn't mention the forensic audit that was actually conducted in 2018, and that was the Claro Report. And that was conducted, I think, in or around August 2018. It was confidential, privileged for a couple of years after that. But we did review that, as I think the commission reviewed it, and that found there was no actual embezzlement. And so that raised the question in my mind, if there was an actual forensic audit that found no actual embezzlement, can you really even say there was a possible attempt to cover up embezzlement? I think those are not reconcilable. And I think I would have liked to have seen more discussion about how does the Claro report, which found no embezzlement, affect the conclusion that there was a possible attempt to cover up embezzlement. So that's just kind of one question that I think would have benefited from some more discussion, where the committee could have deliberated, looked at both of those documents more carefully, and then tested that conclusion. And I don't recall whether either one of those reports was formally distributed to the committee. I received it as part of the commission, but I couldn't find any email traffic from the committee that mentioned the Claro report. And I don't recall personally whether we.
I don't recall receiving it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that's a omission from the report that might affect, a reader's view on circumstances of the procurement of the Citygate report. And I think there are some other implications from even saying that it was possibly an attempt to cover up embezzlement, but I'll leave that to everyone else. Go ahead.
That was recognized as hyperbole by many of the folks who finally signed off on it. And the intent was we had culled down the hyperbole to the point where that was almost mild by comparison. I will just tell you. I'll share that with you.
Okay. Thanks, Pete. The next thing I wanted to kind of talk about that that raised questions for me was the Lauren Rubin lawsuit, and that was a lawsuit filed by a former finance department employee. And I'm looking at finding 2.1 of the report, and I think what the report does is it quotes or references a South Pasadenan article that reported on allegations in this former employee's lawsuit. And the committee report talks about financial irregularities and mishandling of a substantial amount of government and public monies. And so in my mind, my question, if I were a reader of this document, was, that sounds kind of alarming if we're looking for whether we should do a forensic audit. Maybe that's something that should be explored. What kind of irregularities? How substantial is a substantial amount of government public monies? Do these messages, which I downloaded the lawsuit from the court website, and those messages were in the form of emails. So, I would wonder what efforts were made to try to locate the message to determine their existence. Was there an informal request made to staff? Was there a public records request? Has these emails, the existence been otherwise verified? And what exactly did they say? This was a concern to me, and it kind of jumped out that would be something that would possibly deserve more investigation. So that's a question I had reading this, and it wasn't something that we really went into, at least during my tenure, in any kind of focused detail or plan on how we would investigate it. And I don't know whether that ever occurred. Elsewhere, the report says it's unclear to the committee whether Rubin's emails were disclosed to the city council before the Citygate report was procured. And I would wonder how it kind of suggests that there was an investigation possibly as to whether those emails were disclosed, but I don't know how that was investigated. And getting back to the Claro report, we know that the Claro report was commissioned and performed and the results were obtained. The results being there was no embezzlement. That happened before, I believe chronologically, that former employee was terminated from employment. And so I'm not sure whether emails suggesting mishandling of money followed by a forensic audit, which did not find embezzlement. I don't know if there would have been any real difference there if the emails had been conveyed. So those were just some observations and thoughts. Getting to the Citygate report itself, that was an 80-page document, and there were 30-something findings and 40-something recommendations, which the report gives passing reference to. And among those things were delayed bank reconciliations, no policies and procedures manual, finance department personnel not being cross-trained in various processes, monthly and quarterly closings not having occurred in a formal basis for years. So all those things that I just mentioned should have been familiar to the committee. We were looking at those and working on those same things with staff. Staff was very transparent and open about them. And I was just wondering, those aren't discussed at all in the report. There's attribution to an auditor's letter for the 2018-2019 CAFR, but there's really no attribution of any of those items which would have predated Stephanie DeWolf's tenure as the city manager. And so one question I would have is, well, why wouldn't those be in the report? And those were things that would have contributed to the financial reporting crisis. Probably the most interesting thing that I found at the Citygate report was at pages 37 to 40 of the report, which lists a number of internal control weaknesses. And the Citygate report also noted that some of those weaknesses were included in auditors' management letters for at least 3 consecutive fiscal years. Like today, the annual report, that auditor's management letter was disclosed to us, and as it was the last 2 annual reports that we received. But according to the Citygate report, those auditors' management letters were withheld by a prior finance director from the city manager and from the finance commission and from the city council. So the picture that the Citygate report portrays is there were internal control weaknesses. Those were reported in a document generated by the city auditor, and then they were not shown to the governing bodies of the city, which is very alarming if true. And it really would go also a long way to explaining how the city wound up where it did in 2020. So if what the Citygate report is reporting is true, this was a big problem. And I think that there was general consensus on the committee that there was problems that if they did pre-exist Stephanie Dwell's tenure, they got worse. And the 43 recommendations, or however many there were in the Citygate report, were not addressed. And that happened under the watch of the city council at that time. And that needed to be called out as a root cause and a contributing factor to the problem. But I think the point of all this is that that's not discussed. It was a nuance. It wasn't discussed in the report. The report seems to be concerned more with how the committee report, that is more concerned with how the Citygate report was procured. It talks about there not being any competitive bidding for the Citygate report. But as we discussed in a commission meeting in April, there is no requirement for competitive bidding. But I think a lot of that kind of serves a narrative about the procurement of the report, but it doesn't give sufficient attention to the content of the report, which I think was very relevant and germane to the work of the committee. And I would have liked to seen more of a discussion about that, because there was content and it was provided a lot of additional explanations for how the city ended up where it ended up. So I would have liked to seen a little bit more discussion of the Citygate report. And again, this was Citygate report was not formally distributed to the committee, as far as I remember. There's a lengthy section in the report on risk management, and I think it's lengthy and it's important. And this commission, the last meeting or the meeting before, we had a motion which was seconded to put on the agenda in the future meeting a deeper dive into how the city handles risk management. And I think that's a really good discussion that we need to have. I did kind of more independent research on this, especially Government Accounting Standards Board Statement number 10, that deals with reporting of claims and losses and risk management. It sets the guidelines for accruing for loss contingencies in the budgets, disclosing loss contingencies if the contingencies are not accrued for because they don't meet the requirements to do that. Those have to do with the likelihood that a loss will occur, and there's 3 categories: probable, reasonably possible, remote. But any event, that the statement number 10 is the framework, I think, for any kind of disciplined discussion about risk management. And I think it would have been the appropriate framework for any discussion of the specific risk management issues that the report goes into detail on. So I'm just kind of a little bit hesitant to endorse discussions or conclusions that weren't conducted around a really robust kind of understanding of the actual framework and guidelines for engaging in that activity. And I think that this commission should be fully versed in that. And that was the reason why this topic in the committee report was the impetus for wanting to do that. But that close look at statement number 10 didn't happen during my tenure on the committee. And so I can't really endorse conclusions that didn't really start with that framework and then do a really evidence-based analysis of what people did and whether that was in conformity with the applicable guidelines. And that's typically what, I do with my legal work is in my career is you have to figure out what the framework is, and you have to apply the evidence to the standards, and then you have to make a conclusion based on that. And so I think that's one of a kind of a weakness of the report is that actual look at the applicable standards didn't happen. I think it's something that this commission should look at and play as active a role as possible in the future in looking at how the city is doing its risk management and making sure that everything that's done is in conformity with the applicable guidelines. But we need to know what they are. We need to know what the roles are. What are the roles of the city manager? What is the role of the city attorney? The city attorney, there's some discussion about the letter to the auditor. There's a whole policy from the American Bar Association that has to do with the city attorney's letter to the auditor and what has to be disclosed in that. What are the limitations on disclosure because of attorney-client privilege? And fundamentally in that letter to the auditor, there's an evaluation of the outcomes of various legal matters. And then in some cases, estimates of the loss. And what I'm really interested in our future discussion about this is what would review of that city attorney's evaluation of pending legal claims and estimates of losses, what would this commission's review look like? Like what information would we have? How intertwined is that with a legal evaluation that we're not really qualified to make as a commission? So I'm really looking forward to that further discussion about that. But in the meanwhile, I can't disagree or agree with the ultimate conclusions in the report on that topic of risk management. So really looking forward to kind of discussing this more and getting everybody up to speed and figuring out how we're doing it and seeing how can we as a commission fulfill a role in review of that. The final thing I wanted to point out was, let's see what page that was. Okay, page 10 of the committee report. This is finding 5.4. There's a reference to a League of California Cities white paper on city attorney ethics and a potential conflict of interest for a partner in a law firm serving as a contract city attorney to advise the city council on litigation work conducted by other members of the same law firm. So I went to that white paper. It's the League of California Cities Practicing Ethics Manual. And I searched for litigation and I wasn't able to find the language from that white paper that says what the report reports it says. But I did find some language that says that a city contract attorney who is advising the city on the likelihood of success in litigation that could affect the city attorney's income or that of his or her law firm. The white paper says that under the state government code conflict of interest law, that there's no issue. So the way I'm reading that is 180 degrees from what the committee report is reporting. And I just wanted to kind of flag that if this goes before city council, that maybe there should be some more clarity. Because it seems to me that having one private city attorney firm doing both advisory services and litigation services is a really common thing all over the state. But again, I think I'm not seeing the white paper describing that as a conflict, or let alone a potential conflict of interest. And again, that kind of brings us back to the fact that the conflict of interest that we're talking about here is a different conflict of interest than the one previously talked about, which is someone committing fraud. So I think we're looking at conflict of interest as contemplated by state conflict of interest laws. So a little more precision on that, I think would have helped. So I can't endorse the ultimate conclusion that the city should divide advisory legal services, give that to one firm and then give litigation services to another. You know, if it's based on what the League of California Ethics Guide says, I think that's questionable, and whoever reviews that recommendation down the road should try to come to some kind of consensus about what is really the applicable rule there. But then just kind of a general question is, if you are dividing up the advisory services from the litigation attorney services, does the concern about the litigation attorney's billing go away because you're just substituting one litigation attorney for another? So that was a question that I had, and I think that would have been interesting to have a conversation about whether that's really a solution for the perceived problem. And then the secondary question would be, if you're not going to have your litigation attorney advise you or about their evaluation on litigation matters, who is going to do that advising? And if your advisory city attorney is going to do that, isn't that going to generate additional billing by both firms? So those are all just some kind of interesting questions for me to ponder that I think, as far as the ultimate recommendation of the committee is concerned, those would be interesting. So the last thing was the settlement of the sewer case. And I think that raises some really valid and important questions. And in terms of what happened during the course of that litigation, I would imagine there's probably more nuances there in terms of the merits of the various claims and the motions and what, demands for compensation were made. I get the impression that there was a lot more to that. I'm not sure how deep into the merits, underlying legal merits of the case were that the committee got. But it looks like now the city's at this stage where the case has been resolved and the city is going to be seeking reimbursement for the loss and reimbursement for defense costs from its from the insurance pool. And it looks like there was some email correspondence from 2020 where there was a notification of that potentially the loss would not be covered and that the defense costs would not be covered. And then there was also email correspondence to the effect that the city attorney filed a response, and that may have resonated with the insurance. And the very detailed spreadsheet, if there was $600,000 spent in fees and additional $200,000 on the settlement. At this point, I don't know whether there is certainty about whether the loss is going to be covered or whether it won't be covered. And so I think that if it is covered, the discussion about how much fees were paid out, if we're covered above $100,000, then I think there might be a different evaluation of whether those fees were excessive than if it's not covered, and that if the city attorney's opinion that we should be covered was not made or proves not to be accurate, and then that the city has spent that much on fees and a settlement, I think that would also affect, how we're looking at the total amount of fees and what the city may wish to do going forward. So I guess my personal thought on that is I don't know if I have enough information to make any conclusions about the amount of fees. Final conclusion until it's determined whether they're actually going to be reimbursed or not.
Ed, the Councilman Permith was part of that group that reviewed the document prior to submission. And he alluded to, but did not confirm, that there was current discussions underway about recovery of fees. So he said that that he could not disclose. And again, had we had another 3 or 4 or 5 weeks to see if that comes to fruition, we may have come to a different conclusion, much like you're suggesting. So
Yeah.
I don't dispute anything you said yet.
Well, and I want to be really clear about what I'm saying is I'm not saying that the amount of fees doesn't raise questions in and of itself. And I know that in our initial review of the budget, I had some questions about, you know, how much the city was budgeting for fees and how we could trace those in the city's financial reporting documents. And I'm still not super crystal clear about that. And I'm hoping that we can look at that a lot more closely when we're looking at the whole idea of risk management and how we're using the internal service fund, the insurance fund to budget for this kind of thing. And, you know, all this is kind of tied into the role of the city attorney in responding to the auditor's letters about, you know, evaluating claims and estimating losses. And does the estimate include the total amount that the city needs to pay out and then seek reimbursement for? Or does the estimate just would include, you know, our maximum exposure under the city's insurance? So those were all, you know, questions that the discussion and the committee report raised in my mind. And I'm going to keep advocating for us to get more clarity on that and to play as much of a role as we can in ensuring this risk management process is handled in accordance with applicable standards and with a really robust, as the committee report suggests, evaluation of everything. So I'm on board with that.
And Ed, I agree with you. Because this committee was such a unique body, that we didn't have a rule book. We were trying to figure out how we were going to move forward and take care of the must, I guess the must handle items. The first 4 were the ones that had to be handled immediately, and we did so working with the finance staff. You're right that the 5th item is the item about whether or not to pursue a forensic audit. And I know I was part of the problem. I as a citizen literally did not understand the implications of a forensic audit in a public sector environment. So part of that was they needed to pump the brakes so that I could be educated, as well as other people on the group had to be educated. So I understand what you're saying. I appreciate what you're saying. I wish Fred was here because he was part of that discussion group too. I am excited that we're going to present this to City Council. I'm certainly hoping that this puts a pin in it and we can put this behind us. Like you said, harvest the learnings from this experience, because some of them were, if there was ever a school of hard knocks, this is a perfect example of learning the hard way. And I think we should be documenting that. This should be part of our institutional memory. And if we ever bump up against anything like this again, we will be better at it. But I do hope we never get there, to be honest with you. I do hope we never get to the place where that is necessary. So I would propose, and I was quite comfortable supporting giving this over to City Council.
Do the online, we have sorry, I'm blanking on who we have.
That's okay.
We have Commissioner Quaid and Commissioner Chow. Sorry, I'm like,
Mhm.
do either one of you have any questions or comments?
I didn't get through the whole document. And the questions that you raise, Ed, are a little concerning. I suppose that if we take it on, the commission takes on looking into risk management and a few of the other things that you've identified, I would be comfortable sending it to council.
Yeah, we are going to take a closer look at risk management and just get up to speed on that. I think my personal feeling would be if we did a receive and file without a recommendation about the recommendations of the committee report, that's something that I would support. If we were considering a motion whether to endorse the recommendations, I think given my kind of unusual role at this point and some of the concerns that I raise and critiques that I've given, which I really just wanted to say to kind of get out in the open and on the record and recognize reasonable disagreement is possible and everything. And I'm certainly open to any kind of healthy debate or disagreement about that kind of stuff, but it would prevent me. I would probably abstain if we had to come down and make a recommendation on the report's recommendations.
Okay, so Ed, for my benefit, receive and file is different from receive, file, and approve. What's the difference?
I may be wrong, but I think the receive and file is we've looked at it and we've reviewed it and we're passing it along.
Passing it along.
I think we can. I would be willing to do that with a neutral recommendation. I don't want to devalue the committee's work, and I wasn't part of the committee at the
Quite a few months, yeah.
past few months, and I don't want to stop that from moving forward if there is consensus on the ultimate recommendations.
Okay.
I'm just thinking out loud, and that's kind of my feelings about it.
I don't think I would be opposed to handling it in that way. And I don't feel an enthusiastic recommendation by this group is going to give more or less weight to this particular report. The report is what it is. The intent is to put it in front of smart people on our city council and let them make their own decisions, and then put it in front of our citizens, let them make their decisions, and then let's put a pin in it and let's move forward.
I totally agree.
Okay.
Commissioner Tao, do you have any comments?
I think.
Oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, just a point of information. We have put a placeholder on for this item on the upcoming council meeting, the 15th. And that was with the assumption it was receive and file. But of course, if this body's not ready to go that far, we can always pull it down, but it's basically set for the 15th.
And receive and file, but not receive, file, and make a recommendation?
No, it's just receive and file, no
Okay.
additional recommendation or yay or nay. So
And Ed, just one more thing. I know, and I'll speak for myself here, and Cynthia, you may have a point of view here too. Having been part of a professional services firm early in my career, I was a partner at Deloitte. And I remember the days of Enron when.
Yes.
Okay, so Cynthia, that's why I didn't find the idea of having a separation between the litigation attorney and our attorney of record. I did not have a problem with that recommendation because I can remember the days when I was a consulting partner at Deloitte. We could no longer do business with the firms for whom we did audits.
Right.
We stepped back from millions of dollars worth of business in those days.
Yeah.
So that colored my thinking, Cynthia. So
I'm with you.
okay, so you know
with
what
you.
I'm talking about. Okay.
Yes, I do.
Like I said, that particular recommendation to the extent that it was based on the conflict of interest issue in that white paper, I couldn't support that. It may be a good idea to do for other reasons, but not that one.
Okay.
Is the point that I was making.
Fair enough.
I don't have a firm opinion one way or the other about that. I just had the questions that I raised, but yeah, I think that's,
I have the financial scar tissue to prove that, okay?
all right, Commissioner Chow.
Yeah, I'm happy with a receive and file.
Do we have public comment?
There was no emailed public comment. There are no hand raised on Zoom, and there is no public comment in person.
Everybody must be watching the January 6th hearings.
Yeah.
Much more interesting than us.
Yeah, we have
Okay.
competition. So, all right. All right, well, I think we're ready for, it sounds like a motion to receive and file the report.
So moved.
Second,
Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Chair Elsner? Let me do a quick roll call. Chair Elsner?
Yes.
Commissioner Tao?
Yes.
Commissioner Quaid?
Yes.
Commissioner Giulioni?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Great. And thank you again, staff. I mean, honestly, like the work we did was,
You guys
It
were
was good.
superstars. Absolutely.
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Ed, would it be advisable for one of us from the commission to be present at the city council meeting to answer questions from the council, potential questions from the council that may come about our logic or our thinking associated with this?
I think that'd be up to you and the remaining committee members to decide. Since I'm no longer formally a member of that committee.
No, I'm talking about the deliberations of this
Oh,
group.
deliberations of this group. Okay. Well, will this be posted on the city's YouTube account
Can we get it,
before then?
Albert? Yeah, we can try to make that happen.
Yeah, and I think Councilmember Znaimer is here and she can
Oh, that's right.
convey if she's willing to.
Are you willing to be our mouthpiece? Is what he's asking, right? Okay.
I really would like public, robust discussion. The public is entitled to, as you explain eloquently, that they are entitled to know the processes, how the commission, the ad hoc committee arrived to such conclusion, because they're in the dark right now. And that will promote transparency and restore trust in the government.
Had we known we were going to get to this report, I think we would have begun differently with minutes and recording every meeting and tracking every email. We didn't, okay, because we had no model for how to do this. So part of the response where if my neighbor tomorrow knocked on my door and said, "What happened?" I would say we didn't really know what we didn't know when we started down this road. I think the end product was as good as it could be based upon the road we traveled, but the 100% transparency, I will tell you, it never occurred to us, to be honest with you. So shame on us and lesson learned. Yeah.
Just speaking personally, I was just really sensitive to, because there weren't open meetings, that what I contributed to the discussion during my tenure on the committee was either done in full view of everyone else in the committee or documented in emails or on that video. I was really just took personal care not to have side discussions with other committee members or anything like that. I wanted to really kind of keep it as pure as we could and as open, at least on my part, as we could, with the meetings not being public. And I think in terms of what my contributions were, they were done openly, and I tried to kind of adhere to that philosophy, just in my own personal participation.
Yeah, my observation supports that. Absolutely.
I would like to make an additional comment that I hold the finance commissioners to the utmost respect because you have the highest level of financial oversight over the city's finances. And you should not apologize because you had limited knowledge.
Mm.
And there are things that were not disclosable to the public.
Mhm.
And they were, because they fell under the attorney-client privilege. And a lot of those discussions were actually on the merits of the case, as well as attorney fees and costs and strategy. So don't beat yourself up. You did a wonderful job, time consuming. And but I do want the public to participate in the discussion.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed. And I think that to Commissioner Elzer's comment, it is written like a college term paper. And they'll get to about page 4, their eyes will roll into the back of their head. And that will be, no one is going to get to page 12, I guarantee you, except for Ed.
I actually
I'm
stayed up
pretty sure that Commissioner or council members and I were
until 5:15 a.m. and read everything and took notes.
Oh,
And I forgot about the time. And I said, oh, it's time for me to go back to court.
oh no.
But I'm glad I did though.
All right. So back to the agenda.
By the way, thank you for a very, very robust and thorough conversation there. Ed. I
Oh
really
yeah, no
appreciate it.
problem. I really just wanted to kind of like get my thoughts on the record and also acknowledge the different points of view of everyone on the committee. And really, again, credit goes to Steve Rossi for forming the committee and kind of being
He was the impetus.
impetus
Yeah.
and the driving force and the leader of the committee.
Mhm.
So that needs to be acknowledged and respected. Okay, Commissioner Congress report, item number 4 on the agenda.
Yes, commissioners. So we have before us our annual commission report. We usually do hand this report to council, but this year they're actually having a commissioner congress. So that will be held on June 22nd at 6 p.m. in the War Memorial Building for all commissioners. So you're welcome to join. I believe they will be serving dinner. So before us tonight is just the ability to finalize this report. I went ahead and added some of the, regular add-ins, your name on the front, the name of all the commissioners, the council liaison. I put my name. I will add Ken's name. But what I really need from you all is to choose 3 top accomplishments, as well as establish a work plan for the fiscal year. We do currently have a work plan for the calendar year, and I believe that it would work for this as well, but if you want to tweak it at all, that's why I included it in the staff report. So if you need any additional comments from me, just let me know.
I have to confess that I did not print it out, and so I don't have those documents.
I have a copy here if you want to look at it.
Yeah, I'd like to. Actually, Ken, looks like Ken has. Oh, great, thank you. All right. And so is this report, 2022 report, are we looking about our accomplishments in the fiscal? Oh gosh, Gary's here. Gary has his hand up. I'm so sorry. Gary, did I?
Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Terrific.
Good. Just a thought to Stephanie. I think it would be fair for the sake of delineating appropriate roles to somewhere show that the city treasurer is ex officio on the commission.
Okay, I believe I put your name under
Finance Commission.
the Finance Commission, but did you want it separately?
No, what I'm saying is that it would be appropriate to note that the city treasurer sits with the Finance Commission, but is not technically a member of the commission. He's ex officio.
Understood.
That's all. Thank you.
Good suggestion.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Gary.
Gary.
Thanks, Gary.
So for the accomplishments or notable events, we want to do 3 of them. Is that for fiscal year from July 2021 to end of June this year, or are we looking at
It would be this current fiscal year.
this current fiscal year? Okay.
Stephanie, just help me. Ending when?
Oh,
Give me a month.
June 30.
June 30th, 2022.
Thank you. Okay.
We've got 2 pretty new commissioners and me and Dan who's
Yes.
been around for a couple
Yeah.
of years. Do we have thoughts on?
I'm
If
not
you'd
going to be much
like,
help.
I can read off some of the highlights of what you
Yes.
have accomplished.
Please, let's do that.
Okay, so
we'll
as
pick-
you know, you have reviewed our policies and procedures. So that is
Yes.
one huge thing that we accomplished. It assisted in getting some of those findings off of our audit.
Yes, I
Yeah.
like that one.
We always do a review of our master fee schedule. I know you haven't done it this year. It will go before you by the 30th, but I don't know if it really aligns, but that is one thing that we traditionally always do. The mid-year report, Ken kindly put that all together and you were able to review it.
Which report? I'm sorry.
The mid-year budget.
Yes, yes.
We just did the ACFR review and we received and filed that. Budget and CIP, those were combined this year. It was a lengthy process that we did splendidly on. And then also the purchasing policy revamp was done in line with the review of the policies and procedures. So I'm going to go ahead and hand this to you. That way you can look at it visually. There are little check marks next to what's done.
I do think like the super highlight was the policies and procedures. I mean, that was like this like lingering thing that finally got done. I felt got done very well with really custom tailoring to the city and with the further tweaks by city council. And I think it's a really noteworthy accomplishment that's going to be an ongoing kind of living document that will be updated, revised, improved, going forward. And I really like that as one of our top accomplishments. The mid-year budget, that's another accomplishment because it was a really kind of formal, disciplined look at the budget and where we were. And we haven't had that in a really long time. And to all the credit of staff and Ken and everyone who was able to make that happen. It's such an important thing to be able to kind of take a look at where we are mid-year, were our projections right? Do we need to adjust things? Are there new items that have come up? And a lot of the stuff we did in the committee, the ad hoc committee, had to do with changes to the budget where there was no record of them being made or approved. And that mid-year budget really goes a long way, I think, in terms of doing that and making sure that the changes to the budget or new appropriations or whatever, that there's a really solid record of that and what happened and why it happened. So I really like that we were able to do that and also incorporate that into, I think that's in the current policies and procedures, right? Yeah, it is. So
It is, yes.
that was great. What year did we do have the discussion about the CalPERS funding? Was that?
That was this fiscal year.
Yeah. That was, I felt personally a really good discussion. We had every time we said, like, that was one of the best presentations I've seen from an actuary. She was fantastic and really made a complex topic understandable, by people that don't have her specialized skills. And I like how we came to the decision to use the revenue from the cell tower leases and find a really good use that's going to have ongoing benefits for the city. in reducing its unfunded CalPERS liability. So I think those would probably be my favorite, greatest hits for the last fiscal year. Interested in the thoughts of the other commissioners on that.
Like Cynthia, you've given my rookie status here. I will lean on you as it's what you sounds reasonable. Okay.
No, Pete.
Yeah, I can't find much to dispute those suggestions.
Yeah.
All right, Commissioner Chow, do you have any thoughts or do you have any great accomplishments that we're overlooking?
I think you got both.
All right.
All right.
Okay. So what do you need from us now? Do we need a,
Just move to add those 3 accomplishments to your 2022 annual report.
all right, I'll make that motion.
And I'll
Okay,
second it.
perfect. Thank you.
All right. And then,
And now we move on to establishing a work plan that aligns with the city's strategic plan.
Mhm.
So I'm going to hand you one more document just for visual sake. And I circled 2 things that you have already accomplished, just to add it in there as easy to do if you want to. This is shorter than what the work plan we have for our calendar year. So it's up to you what you want to add or reduce or how you want to put this together.
yes, I'm looking at the document. We have task. I'm sorry, this was
This is the city's strategic plan.
strategic plan. Okay.
And that is just the first page because that is the one that is financially in line. The others are more local business, infrastructure, not really finance related.
All right. So I'm sorry I didn't review this more carefully before the meeting. Are we looking at, we're doing a work plan? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can work off of the one we already established, which is the first document I handed to you. Add or take out whatever you'd like.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Correct.
All right. So we have the long-range financial plan. We have reduced CalPERS unfunded liability. Are we going to revisit that? Is that
That's something you can definitely monitor. We have been trained on how to pull reports and we are able to give the commission an update on how that's doing if you'd like.
yeah, I think an update on that should be a regular agenda item.
Okay.
On a periodic basis. And possibly what month do they determine what their return, they change their
The actuary.
rates of return. What month does that happen?
I'd be glad to check on that.
Yeah, so maybe we can schedule an update on that after we know what their forecast is
Okay.
and how that might impact the city. That makes sense to everybody.
Is it there an expectation that this commission then would make a recommendation to the city council or to the finance director on moving in a certain direction? I don't understand.
This would be something that the commission would then be responsible for reviewing.
Okay.
And if there is ever a need to make a recommendation or move this on to council to make changes, you would do so.
Perfect. So we're going to monitor.
I think
Monitor.
it's an
So
update.
basically for review.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
Just basically for review only is what I'm understanding, unless there's something that we see that we want to make a recommendation or change.
Fair enough. Okay.
Financial policies. So we've talked a little bit at this meeting about that document is heading into the final stages. Do we want to kind of periodically take a look and see, whether updates? I think that's kind of in the spirit of what we were talking about. Is it a living document? And, are there new or changed circumstances, or is one thing not working and we need to tweak it a little bit?
Right.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, you will recall in our deliberations regarding policy procedures that we said we'd bring it back to you every July, kind of like we do
Okay.
with investment policy,
Perfect.
if there's any tweaks.
Perfect.
And for me, Ken, the issue that we were discussing at the beginning of the meeting about how do we get the finance department staffed at a appropriate level and by permanent staff, I think would live under 1C.
That would be a very good one.
So I don't want to wait till July. Basically is what I'm telling you. Okay.
Yeah, I think there was strong agreement on the committee that like the staffing is like high priority.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And finding a permanent finance director too. I really looking forward to checking those boxes off.
Yeah. Ken, you don't want to abandon your pension, correct? I'm assuming. Okay, fine.
Business license tax. We have research and recommend update to business license tax. Can you describe that a little bit, Ken? Or
Steph's.
That is still in the works of being discussed with our city manager's office. They do want to look in possibly doing a study on our business license tax. It's been quite a while since we have looked into if our fees are collecting what we should be. So that would, if we end up doing that study, that would be something we bring before the commission for review.
So it's not only the tax, the amount, but it's also enforcement?
No, enforcement would be on staff, and so that it would just be looking over what the recommendation that is brought to the commission, if it's feasible, if it's something that you want to recommend to the city council adopt. Right now, we already have a business license tax fee schedule that is not allowed to be increased by CPI like our master fee schedule because it's considered a tax. Therefore, we have to go out to have that examined by professional services vendor, and we would take that report to you for review.
Okay, thank you.
and is that something we're looking to do on an annual basis?
No, that would just be, well, it would depend on the recommendation that we receive.
So at the least, we're looking at it right now as a one-time thing we want to do in the.
Yes, something that we would
Okay.
do this upcoming fiscal year.
All right, that makes, I mean, it needs to be done, it sounds like, and just a heads up that there was in the past history of the city, that there was a business tax
Mhm.
controversy. So we want to avoid previous issues.
Right.
Is there any value to having that report from staff to us 90 days prior to the budgeting process? Because there's a line item, income item that says business tax. I'd like to understand, are we at or near 100% collection,
Right. I believe it would help in the forecast of revenue
right?
for the budget.
Right.
So I can make that recommendation to staff that will be going out to bid for this.
And there may be a very good reason why it doesn't happen, Stephanie, but it's just, if you're giving me a line item on a budget that we anticipate getting $10, I want to know why or how.
Right.
Okay.
All right, yeah, let's definitely, I think that's appropriate to get on our calendar here. The last thing is the library parcel tax renewal. Okay.
I don't know that the commission would have much say on that one. That I think that's just part of the city strategic plan.
I would personally want to put it on our agenda, just
Okay.
to draw attention to it.
Okay.
It kind of, we don't see library issues very frequently.
Mhm.
And a lot of times that it gets overlooked in the budget discussion. We don't spend, we're looking at other things and it doesn't
Right.
come up. But I personally, and this is up to with other commissioners, I'd like to just get it on the
Just a report from
calendar
staff on how it's going.
and really
or-
look at it and draw attention to it and
Okay.
talk about the renewal. And I have a personal interest in that. And I think
Yeah.
we should get more information.
There's a
Mm.
very active committee here in the city
There is.
that is working on this. So I'd like to understand their efforts. But
Me-
again, I'm
me as well.
sorry.
I just comment, this is more of a library item. I know there's a staff report coming up where library services is looking to get the tax continued, if you will.
Mhm.
And so it might be on there, but it's not really a finance item. I don't have the list in front of me.
I think there's enough gray there.
Yes,
I'd like
it's a
to,
fiscal item indeed.
yeah, I'd
but-
like to understand.
Yeah,
Yeah.
as far as the burden of that is, I know they're working on it. So
Okay. So Stephanie, you just need big stars next to what we like here?
Yes.
Okay, all of them.
I'll move to add all of these items onto our calendar as we've discussed.
I'll
Okay.
second.
Okay.
I'll do a roll call in just a moment.
Okay.
Okay, Chair Elsner,
Yes.
Commissioner Tao,
Yes.
Commissioner Quaid,
Yes,
Commissioner Giulioni.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we finished on that item or are we, there's,
Just for clarification's sake, there was no public comment on this
Okay.
item. There is no in-person public comment and there are no hands raised on Zoom.
okay. All right. So last item on the action part of the agenda are the minutes for Finance Commission meeting on 9/23/21, 2/7/22, and 2/24/22. Do we happen to have any spare copies of those? I don't have.
I'm sorry.
Do we
Oh,
have,
copies,
yeah,
yes.
copies? Yeah. I briefly looked through these at home, but
Unfortunately, many of the commissioners that were in these meetings are no longer on the commission.
And that's the point I was going to make. Since I was not part of the commission, it's hard to approve minutes
yeah.
that I didn't experience.
I'm looking at the September
all
23,
three of them are there.
2021, and I think it accurately reflects what happened. That one looks okay to me. February 7th, 2022. A mid-year report. Update on the cell tower revenue. I don't see any issues. And then February 24th, 2022. We had a bare minimum of a quorum, as I remember, or 3-0. Say present. Yeah, so we had 3 commissioners present.
Mhm.
And that was the selection of the OPEB trustee. Update on investment philosophy. This kind of reminds me, we kind of never got around to doing the selection of a commission chair and vice chair
Mhm.
for the calendar year. So now we have a 5
Yes, we do.
commissioners, so I think it's probably appropriate that we
Add that back to the
add that
agenda.
back.
It is my intention to add that to the June 30th regular meeting.
So we're halfway through, so it'll, do we want to maybe go through, just kind of keep going how we're going and then revisit it at the end of the year?
We do have our vice chair vacant, so maybe
Oh,
we
we do,
want
yeah.
to
Okay,
establish that.
all right. So let's just get it on the agenda and like
June 30th?
leave different options open, but at the
Yes,
very
Mr.
very
Chair.
least, we'll do a vice chair.
Okay,
and then have a good discussion about that. But other than that, I don't see,
Stephanie, I assume you have the roles and responsibilities of the chair and the vice chair somewhere?
Our city clerk's office may have that. I do not have it readily available right now.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't expect you to pull that out of your pocket. If you could mail it to us, that'd be very helpful.
That'd be
Thank you.
great. Yes.
yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing that one.
Oh, yeah, sure.
To make sure that I'm fulfilling my responsibilities. All right, so I'm not seeing any problems with the minutes. I'd be okay approving them. Commissioner Tao, you were, I believe, at some of these meetings. Do you agree with these?
I think I was only on one of those 3, so it's all you.
Okay. All right, well, if you guys trust me that I think these look good, then let's have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second it.
Okay. I'll do a roll call. Chair Elsner,
Yes.
Commissioner Tao,
Yes. Are we documenting yeses for the ones who are present and then just abstain for the others?
they are welcome to abstain, but they do not have to.
Okay.
You need quorum, don't you?
We do need a quorum,
We do need.
because we need a vote. one way or the
Unfortunately,
other.
Chair Finley isn't here.
So how many do we have right now? Have we done it? We've got
We have 4 out of 5.
Yeah, two of us weren't at any of those meetings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 2.5. So I mean, we need a vote, right?
I think we need to vote, yeah.
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 All right.
Commissioner Tao, does your,
Unless, oh, well, here's another option. Unless the non-present commissioners want to review the videos on YouTube and watch the videos they missed and verify, that's a possibility. But I'm comfortable personally, having been in all these meetings, and I think they accurately state what happened at those meetings. And then if we approve them now and someone happens to see a problem, if they happen to be reviewing one of the videos of the meeting, we can revisit it. Does that make sense?
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Commissioner Tao,
Yes.
Commissioner Quaid,
Yes.
Commissioner Giulioni.
Yes.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right. So action items over and checked off. Now we go on to communications, and let's hear from our city council liaison.
First, I would like to thank the Finance Commission for really being so diligent in doing a deep dive on the proposed budget 2022 and 2023. I think you held about 2 special meetings plus regular meetings, and a total of like 6 meetings for me. So that was really impressive how you really broken down all the items that were not clear. And it was to me, I learned a lot from your questions and answers. And secondly, I would like to suggest that all major revenues that the city is receiving, like property taxes, UUT, Measure A, and business tax, should be in the purview of the Finance Commission, including master fee schedule, probably renewable every 5 years or so, because all the financials should go through the Finance Commission. And thirdly, I would like to congratulate Ken for being so patient. I pull once every council meetings, and it was actually a springboard for me in learning the complexities of finances, contracts, and other stuff that went with it. So thank you, Ken, for being so patient with me. But I'm curious, and if I don't understand, I ask. So thank you very much, Commissioners, Finance Commissioner. I hold a lot of great respect for all of you and for your dedication and time devoted to this city. And everyone has a skin in this game. So I really appreciate your valuable time. Thank
Yes.
you.
Thank you as well for like you said, you you had double the meetings on the budget that we had because you're here and you're also for city council, and we really appreciate your consideration of our recommendations and discussion. Staff liaison communications.
I would still like to hold our June 30th regular meeting just to get back on track. If that's okay with all the commissioners.
Yeah, I think so long as we don't have anything in between now and then,
Yeah.
I think we'll all have recovered from our
Budgetary overdose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
before we go to commissioner communications, I want to give Gary an opportunity to say something if he has some thoughts he wants to share, the city treasurer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just, it's probably somewhat common knowledge, but we are having a general election in November. The office of city treasurer is going to be on that ballot, and I'm not running for re-election. So I think it is well for the commissioners to note that maybe something you want to take on informally, individually, is to consider encouraging qualified candidates to put their names forward for the office. So just putting a collective bug in all of your ears. And that's all I had in mind. I echo the congratulations to the commission. You're an impressive body. You do impressive work. And I admire and appreciate your expertise and dedication. And same goes for staff. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Gary. We really value your input and contributions, and we will savor every minute we have with you before you step down, and hope that we have a outstanding candidate who is willing to put their hat in the ring and run and devote the time that you have to the city for such a long time.
It's an honor. Thank you.
You're welcome. Commissioner communications. I think Pete wants to go.
Gary preempted me. So thank you, Gary. I appreciate that. And looking for qualified candidates to try to fill big shoes.
And Commissioner Quaid, do you have any comments you want to make?
Not any tonight.
Commissioner Tao?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thanks. And I don't have any other, I think I'm not going to say hijack, but I did talk a lot tonight, so I don't have any communications. So I guess we're at the end of the meeting unless there's anything else. All right, let's adjourn. It's 8:25 p.m. and we'll bring the special meeting of the South Pasadena Finance Commission to a close. Thank you, everybody.
So are we going to have the Monday meeting? Is that off the schedule now?
That is now off the schedule since we have a receive and file motion from the commission.
Okay.
Thanks again, everyone. Good night.
Good night. So Cynthia, what's a week without a commission meeting, right?
Right. Commission meetings, board meetings. I know. It's been busy.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Good night.